What's going on, everybody? Josh Weidman here with Hard Money Bankers. Thanks for joining us on today's Market Makers podcast. I have a fantastic guest here that I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking to. Brock, I am going to butcher your last name, so I'm not even going to try. How do you say your last name?
It's Smellion. So like the CH is silent, basically, is the easy way to say it.
Okay. All right. One more time. Smellion.
Whoa.
Yep. The wrong one. I'm sorry. One more time.
Smellion.
Smellion. Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. All right. That's not so bad. Perfect. So, Brock, you're in Hanover, right? You're in Hanover, PA?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Got it. So, I mean, I'm right outside of Hershey here in Palmyra, and Hanover. We used to wrestle with a lot of guys like that out there when I was in high school. Okay. But you've over the last 5 years, you've really built a pretty great business out there. Let's start there. Like, tell me about what you're doing now, and let's dig in a little bit further from there about how you got into real estate, and yeah, we'll take it from there.
For sure. Yeah. So I used to race dirt bikes, and basically I was kind of bred into the dirt bike racing field. My dad raced professionally back, years ago. So when I was born, I had a dirt bike before I could even ride. So I started riding at 4 years old. At 16 or 17, I guess, went professional with it, and then had the opportunity to do it for, I guess, like 5-6 years racing professionally with dirt bike racing. Had the opportunity to go to 48 states and 3 different countries, all because of riding dirt bikes, basically. So wow. I felt like I lived my life a little bit in reverse. I got the travel time, I got to get out and about. And then, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after racing, it was being close to home, being around family, being around loved ones mattered, I guess, more to me than maybe someone that, stayed home and then went off to college or something like that. Like, I felt like I already had my college experience. I wanted to come back home and be around family a little bit more. So sure. I worked some different odd jobs, like 2 weeks at a time, just telling people all I've ever done is ridden a dirt bike. I don't know what I want to do here. Can I work for you for 2 weeks and figure out what I want to do? And my aunt was in real estate, so she had me meet with the manager of the office that she worked at. And I kind of had like a midlife crisis at 26. I wrote out who I wanted to be in 5 years. And I thought that real estate, out of the things that I did, kind of brought me closer to those goals than anything else. So I started as a realtor, first year, full-time right away. First year, I felt like a hamster on a wheel. I worked my tail off, probably 80 hours a week, and I sold 4 houses. And I thought, is this me? Should I be doing this? What's wrong with me? All those kinds of feelings. But then we sold 37, I think the year after that, 63. I think we were at 96 or 97, and then I think 82 or 83 last year. So I built a team. I hired a transaction coordinator / assistant. And the past 12 to 18 months, we've been mostly just focused on production because the market's been a lot more difficult. We're also at RE/MAX right now. And RE/MAX is great for some things, but for growing a team, it can get really expensive. So our focus right now is mainly on just production while we kind of figure out what we want to grow in the future, but it's just not the right timing now with what the market's bringing us. So.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a couple steps back. Let's start with the dirt bike racing. And so my only introduction or my only experience with dirt bike racing when I was 15, I went down to this place called Grundy, Virginia. It's like this little tiny town in the middle of nowhere for a wrestling tournament or something. And this guy had a dirt bike. He's like, "Oh, jump on the back. I'll take you down the way." I never got on a two-wheeled vehicle ever again. I mean, it scared me half to death. And then I ended up at my goodness, I was at a bachelor party. I mean, this is 20 some years ago in near the University of West Virginia. And we end up spending a Saturday, at this dirt bike race. And it was like a friend of a friend invited us to this thing. So we go out there with no cash because we were supposed to get hooked up, and all we had to drink was beer. And so it was, it was perfect for a bachelor party, but it wasn't a great experience. It was pretty cool though to watch the races.
You went to a track then, or what was it?
Yeah, it was a track somewhere. I mean, it was 25 years ago, and I wasn't of clear mind at the time. So I'm Since then, I haven't been back, but not because it wasn't fun.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like it's almost like a past life now. Racing dirt bikes, and the mindset that it takes to do that, and like the propensity for risk and everything. It's just like stepping into a different world going into real estate. But I think it helped me and prepared me really well for real estate. I with racing, I'd had days that my femur popped out of my skin. I've had like some really serious injuries from racing dirt bikes. So with that, when I started as a realtor and it was like, hey, go door knock this property, it was like, well, my worst case scenario is they say no. I'm not going to leave with like a broken bone or have to go to the hospital. Like, I could do this. I could figure this out.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned door knocking. I'm from a construction background, and like that's the #1 lead generator. Windows and siding and roofing. Like, you're knocking doors all day long. You get used to that, and everything else is easy. It's pretty wild.
That's right. Yeah. My dad was a roofer, and I always say my dad was a roofer, and that's why I'm not, because I know what it takes to do that job. It's tough work.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. Well, so okay. So, you have this existential crisis at 24. You decide to get into real estate, and then you sell 4 houses. I mean, I'm sure they were, 10 million a piece. So you made a ton of money off of them.
And I started Berkshire Hathaway, where they take 6% off the top, and it's a 50-50 split after that. So it was slim pickings that first year. I had a little bit of money saved up from racing, and I managed the team that I rode for 2 years after I got done racing. And so I had a little bit of money saved up from that, but I depleted every bit of it becoming a realtor. It was everything I could do to stay alive.
Well, and I think that's why a lot of agents, they wash out after a year or less, because it's not easy breaking in. There's so much, the learning curve is so big. I mean, at this point, like, we've both gone through a couple hundred transactions, and, the things that you don't even think about anymore are the stuff that people just don't realize, are part of the deal. Like, making sure that you make the phone calls and set up order title in enough time to get it back in time, that, if there's any problems to deal with. That seems pretty straightforward, but it's not on most people's checklist when they're buying or selling a house.
For sure.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So at 24, you decide to go into this thing. How the heck did you go from 4 units to, what'd you say, 37?
37. Yep. I feel like it was just, I was working so much in the first year, but it was like stocking the pond for year 2, basically. So it was like people that maybe they weren't ready just yet, or whatever it might've been, but they were getting closer. So all those people started to turn over in year 2, and it made it a lot better. I hired an assistant really early on, and she is still with me. She's an absolute rock star. She was a loan ops for 18 years. She was a realtor for 10 years. She was making subs at a local shop and just didn't feel fulfilled. So I brought her on, and she was, with me being so green in the business and not knowing completely what I was doing, she was like the perfect right-hand person for me at the time. So she's been with us the entire time since then. We have a marketing director now, we have a ISA, and then we have 3 additional agents in addition to myself right now. So that's kind of we have a runner too. I hired my dad, the roofer that I talked about. I hired him as a runner to do like lock boxes, signs, measurements, and stuff like that. So I really don't know that there was like one thing. I don't think year 2 was the reason that I had year 2. I think year 1 was the reason that I had year 2. It just looks on paper like I only sold 4. But I mean, by the end of that year, I was sitting down with my office manager going, what am I doing wrong? Like I feel like all these people are close. I feel like I should be making money, but I'm just not making anything. And like, I'm not helping anyone, but that second year is when things really started to turn over and do really well. And then 2018 is when I started. 2019, everything went really well. And then 2020 was COVID. So we still sold a lot of properties that year, but that had its own challenges with, I think for 2 months, we weren't allowed to show houses, so it was challenging.
Yeah. Well, I think sales, and regardless of what industry you're in, it's a lot like farming, right? Like, you don't get paid to plant the seeds and fertilize the field and do all the work that goes into it. And, the production that you get on the back end, that's the easy part that people don't understand. It's 10 times the work to actually get to the point where there's some kind of yield. And then when it does come, you got to keep that ball rolling. I started as a wholesaler, and it's a little bit of a who knew, but we used to go through, it was like a push-pull situation. Like you market, you find the deals, you find the seller, you hold everybody's hand to get the closing, and then it's like you got to start all over. And if you don't build that team, it's this push and pull all the time. You really need to have that team there to keep the ball rolling and keep things going. So all right, so you get through COVID. You're now at, you said what is it, like 56 or 60 some?
We did 63 that year in 2020. Yeah.
Okay, so you got 60 some units coming in. You're making sales, then you're up to 80. You know, you told me in an email, in our email, you know, and discussion before we get started here, what's you had kind of an issue with a house hack, like along the way. Okay, what?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about that? Because that's something, as I said, like I've had a little bit of experience with that, but not personally, more so managing properties. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I was basically house hacking. I found a 6 unit, but it was 4 units by themselves and then a little 2 unit out back. And I found that through a realtor contact of mine. So I bought it off market, got a pretty decent deal and a good interest rate. There was a tenant in there that was in there for 16 years. I had a person on my team, their family member needed a place to stay. So I arranged some things and asked that guy if he could, kind of politely, if you could find a place, I want to help this person out. Brought this person in. They were probably at my unit it was a 4 unit. I lived in one. I had my office area in one. I had a 80-year-old war veteran living in one of the units, and then this other person that was in the last unit. They were probably with me for 6 months, always paid on time, never had a problem. They had a buddy that was getting back on their feet, so to speak. And he let him move in with him on a Sunday just for a week or two, apparently. I didn't know about it at the time. He moved in on a Sunday. 2 days later, I woke up to my house being burned down. He smoked a cigarette on the back porch, threw it into a trash can. It was a really windy day, and it burned and condemned all 4 units. So I basically, because I was house hacking, I had a different address. Because I was house hacking, I wasn't claiming that I was living at the property because I wasn't full-time at the property. I was just kind of staying there, but I was there a little bit more often most recently. So basically everything that I use on a daily, monthly, weekly basis has all been burned. Luckily, all the work stuff was mostly salvaged. So I can still, that's the crazy part, Josh, is, March 12th is when my house burned down. April, we had the best month in real estate that we've had in probably 18 months or so. So
I'm really sorry. I got this dog here that's quiet all day, and all of a sudden he's going crazy.
I had a phone ring earlier, so you get me back.
This happened in March of this year, so 2 months ago.
That's correct. Yep.
Oh my gracious, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. You're not even on the other side of this thing, and I'm bringing it up. Oh
no, you're fine. You're fine. I brought it up to you, so you're good.
Okay.
I overall, I've learned with insurance, I had an actual cash value policy. It didn't have any of my personal contents on it. So I've learned a lot with insurance, like replacement value versus actual cash value. I've learned so much through the experience, and probably the number one thing that I've received through it is empathy for other people that might be going through a similar situation. With us and selling houses, we're going to run into other people that go through something similar. And now I'm really going to be able to help and educate and guide them. I didn't realize there's a ton of vultures out there trying to hit you up for money because it's insurance money that's involved and all these different things. And without ever, kind of experiencing it myself, I'd never have that viewpoint. So I believe that I really, and that's even deeper down the line. Like what I'm in this business for is I want to start a school that improves my local community. It teaches problem solving instead of memorization. And I'd like to impact 1,000 to 2,000 kids a year in my local community by doing that, long term. So with something like this happening, you either figure out that that's not for you or you figure out that it's more for you. Does that make sense? It's major things that can either change your direction or it can just push you even more full force in it. And I'm more full force than I've ever been with that. It just feels like the things that have lined up and how they've lined up, like all my work stuff was salvaged, but all my personal stuff was burned. Almost makes me feel like maybe distractions, things were getting in the way. I could spend more time doing what my purpose is a little bit more. So had oodles of people come out of the woodwork. I had a realtor that got me like $400 worth of work clothes that showed up to the place I was staying that night to give me those clothes. Like, if
Wow.
you're going to lose a lot of your personal stuff, seeing how many people are there for you and stick up for you in a time of need, it's kind of it's really crappy right now, and it's a lot to deal with right now with insurance and everything. But I'm very confident that in 18 months I'm going to be in a better position than I am now because of all this crap happening to me.
Well, and it's interesting that you this just happened to a friend of mine that like literally Saturday. We were talking Saturday, and I see a comment from him on Sunday afternoon about this fire, and yeah, I mean it literally happened in over a 24-hour period, and he said the same thing you did about the vultures. He goes, my house is burning, and I got people standing next to me talking about, sign this contract for us to rebuild or
Yep.
to clear this out or do these things. And he's like, I can't even think about that at this point. He's like, I mean, he said the same thing you did. Like all his his son's memorabilia, things that his mom left him, and things like that you don't think about. And I mean, all of our stuff, as much as we want to pretend like it doesn't matter, like we got emotional ties to it. And when it disappears, like it's not easy. And it's nice to know it is true that when you go through difficult times like that, you see who your friends are and who shows up, and it's pretty cool. It's it's a good learning experience. So what you brought up the school. I mean, we typically on the show we'll talk about the market, and we'll get to that. But tell me about this school. You keep throwing these nuggets out there. I want to hear what's going on with that.
I don't know what it's going to look like yet. I don't know what it might even be online by the time it gets there. I don't know exactly how it's going to be yet, but for some reason, so with racing dirt bikes, my dad was a roofer. My mom and dad divorced when I was 1. My mom worked 3 jobs to put me into a Christian school. We never had like a lot of money. So the way that I went to different countries and different states riding dirt bikes is mostly like other people saying, hey, I believe in you. I want to give you money to go fulfill your dreams, basically. And it made such an impact on who I am as a person. And I can't imagine who I'd be without like seeing these different cultures, seeing how people live at a young age, and really even being in motocross and being with the team that I was with, even seeing how like the business side of things works with the team industry and everything. I wanted to use it as college, basically. And I had one sponsor specifically. I never had the money to go out to California where a lot of the racing goes on over the winter. He gave me $20,000 cash and bought me a van and said, go live your dreams. And, in this business, 20,000, like that changed my life. Like I would not be the person that I am today if I didn't have like help and a hand up in those ways. So when I was going through my whole midlife crisis type of a thing, I was trying to figure out how I could do the same, but across like a larger swath of people where you could really impact things. And I can't think of a better way to impact your local community than to start a school that teaches problem solving, teaches how to balance a checkbook, different things like that are real world application, possibly even coding and stuff now, but it's like real world applications that you're going to be using later in life. And I feel like I'm on this planet to provide impact and to provide help for people. And that's just the way that I've identified that I feel like is the most massive impact that I can make. So I'm sure if I had a brain like Elon, maybe I could even do more for the world. But I think that people, if you have like something in your mind that like, man, I could do this to benefit humanity, we owe it to humanity and we owe it to ourselves to go do that. Because not everyone that's born is capable. So if for whatever reason you have that inkling, that whatever, like race with that, because it's your expression and it might not live through anyone else.
Yeah, man, that's great stuff. That's really great stuff. And I think so many people, we go through life and we don't we get so tied up in what's happening right in front of us that you never take the time to step back and think about, number one, what you want, and number two, like what you should be doing. What's the inclination? What's the thing that drives you? And that's great. That's great. So
I'm so blessed that at 32, I feel like I know my life's purpose, and most people go their whole lives and they're still trying to capture that or feel that or whatever. So, and it didn't start. It wasn't like I woke up one day and I was like, this is my purpose. I started talking about it and it became, like it was just, this is how I feel I can make an impact. Now I'm just going to tell people I'm going to do it. And I have no choice but to uphold it now.
I love it. I love it. That's great. That's great. So, all right, let's talk about the market. I mean,
Yeah.
much more superficial, but like I'll tell you what, for I got started right before the 2008 crash. Like I
Wow.
bought 3 properties right before the crash, and didn't do great. um, so since then, I've had this feeling, I've been looking for the next crash, right? If you want to time the market and all that kind of stuff. And 2000, or let's say 2019, sure looked like it was going to be. And then we
Mhm.
had COVID and things changed drastically. And we've had quite a few years of an upward market, upward market, upward market. And now with these higher interest rates and some changes and things, uh, even over the last year, as interest rates have held high, I keep thinking that there's going to be some major change, and I just don't see it. What are you seeing out there? Yeah, what are you seeing out there?
So our market is still really competitive. In Pennsylvania, I'm on the Maryland PA line, and in Maryland, it's even more competitive than it is in Pennsylvania because I'm dual licensed, so we operate a little bit in both. So it's a hot market in Pennsylvania, but it's an even hotter market in Maryland. In
Yeah.
Pennsylvania alone, one of my agents on my team, $120,000 property, offered 140 this week, missed out. Someone else got it, 20,000 over. Someone else 2 weeks ago, $200,000 property, they went 240, lost, didn't win. So I mean, it's almost feeling like it's getting back to that COVID level where there's like multiple offers on every property, especially if it's early on the market and it's priced competitively. The tough part is when rates come down. I just saw a statistic the other day that 59% of home buyers are waiting for rates to drop. So you have such an influx and such a built up, pent up demand. On top of that, average first time home buyer is 34 years old now. With what FHA says, average first time home buyers 34, and most millennials don't own a home yet. So you have this large
Mhm.
swath of people that need to experience home ownership at the same time. I don't see a way that prices can come down right now. I think that if rates come down, you're almost likely to see prices go up. I think the biggest shoe to pop is maybe like the commercial real estate.
Yeah.
There, a lot of those are interest rates that they have to get refinanced every 10 years or so, and there's a lot of them that are coming up. So that if we see something major with massive defaults in the commercial market, it could bleed over, and we could see a little bit in residential as well. But as of right now, I'm with you, Josh. I don't see anything that there's no writing on the wall as far as our population, the amount of homes that we have built, and the demand. I just don't see that changing quickly. We're getting a little bit more listings now that are going pending. But man, we just saw the interest rate go from 8 to 7% in the past 3 weeks, and we already see that influx of buyers.
Yeah.
So as it's to come down a little bit more, I don't see how that works other than massive layoffs, massive pain, just the economy falling apart or something. That's almost what we would need to see right now for homes prices to change.
Well, and I'm in the same boat. I think it's been interesting though over the last 2 months. We have seen we interviewed somebody last week that she does foreclosure work and
Yep.
short sales and things like that, and they're like 3 or 4 times what they've seen over the last 2 or 3 years. But
Yep.
even still, those numbers are still tiny in
Yep.
comparison to historic norms. And I have seen an uptick in the number of listings, like you're saying,
Yep.
but it's not, it's still not meeting demand.
Yep.
The days on market are still low. Like you're saying, you still have competitive offers. One thing I did notice is that properties that are not beautiful and not perfect, but like are not at least decent and better, they have a little bit harder time selling. I think
People are
it's,
picky.
well,
Yep.
yeah, because look, if you're going to put down a very large, chunk of
Yep.
change on this property, and you're paying even 7% on a mortgage, you don't want to then have to go out and spend a ton of money to rehab the place.
That's correct.
And so, there's definitely opportunities there, I think, for investors.
Yep.
But at the same time, those houses I see out there, they're just overpriced. I mean, people have an unrealistic expectation, I think, of an unimproved property and what it can sell for.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think those ones that need a little bit of touch up work, those are great for first time home buyers too.
Yeah.
Even those properties tend to sit maybe a little bit longer. You might be able to work in some seller's assistance or something, help toward closing. And if it's
Hmm.
through a flip company, sometimes you can even ask them to make some of the repairs for the property because they can do it cheaper than what you can. So
Right.
that's even an avenue. You want to be careful on the level of detail they put and the quality they put in the work, because they're doing it just to sell the property. But if you're buying a flip property, you're probably already dealing with that level of quality. So if you're comfortable with it, you're probably still comfortable with it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's quite a few actually in out in your market. There's one of the biggest home buyers in the country, out of Hanover, I think. And I mean, they do nice work. You know, like it really depends. I think there are people that they put lipstick on a pig, you know, and put that pig right back on the market. And then there's investors that are in it and have been around it a long time that know, like, you do nice work, it's going to pay off. Now you gotta buy at the right numbers to be able to do that work. But at the end of the day, you know, it really pays. And there are some really good flipping companies out there, and you know, and some that aren't so good. So just do your homework, and if you can do it in this competitive market, get a home inspection.
For sure. And really, I'm a proponent. Even if you don't get it for the sale, get it after. You know, get a home inspection still, and know all the things that, you know, a good home inspector is going to tell you how to bring things up to code. You can know certain projects that you want to tackle while you're living there, and then your property is that much more ready when you go to sell later. So I think even in times that you have to forego a home inspection, I think they're still really important.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So, Brock, if somebody wants to sell a house with you or buy a house, you know, using you or your team, how do they get in touch with you? What's the easiest way?
Probably the easiest way is just shoot me a call or an email. That number at the bottom doesn't get texting. That's my broker's phone number. So it goes straight to them, and then they can direct it directly to me. And then there's also an email address at the bottom to contact me directly as well. So I'm typically pretty responsive. I structure my day to answer phone calls and emails at certain times throughout the day so I can stay a bit more regimented. But I always get back to people within a couple hours to make sure that I can, you know, provide the best service that I can.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Brock, I really, really appreciate talking to you today. And I'm glad you made the transition, right? I'm glad you got off the bike and sat down, had your midlife crisis at 24. You know, that might be a really good lesson for, you know, anybody that's getting out of college and entering the workforce. Maybe you have your midlife crisis early so you can get over it and move on and have some success. Look at a 5-year plan, detail it out, and execute. Like, that's the biggest thing.
I took a piece of paper and I drew it into four corners, I guess you'd say. And I put lifestyle, health, you know, financial, and then like hobby, basically, like spiritual, basically. So I just put 4 corners and I wrote, who do I want to be in each one of these corners? And then tried to choose the thing that got me closest to it. And one thing that I'll leave everyone with that I think is one of the best pieces of advice that I got during that time, I had a doctor friend of mine who was an eye doctor, made really good money. I was looking at a couple other fields and I was like, even real estate, I was like, yeah, but the average earner doesn't make that much. And he said, Brock, never look at the average earner. He said, average earners don't earn dick, and you're better than average. So your goal is to look at like what that top 5% is getting. Like, that's what you should look at. And he said, one thing to be certain of is that a lot of people climb the ladder of success their entire life. They get to the top of the ladder and they realize they're on the wrong damn building. He said, make sure that whatever building you choose and whatever ladder you choose, it's going to exceed whatever the top is of what you want out of life. And that was probably one of the best pieces of advice that I got in that position, because the other avenues that I was looking at probably didn't have the ceiling that real estate has. And you know, Josh, real estate has like the ultimate ceiling. I don't know if there is a ceiling yet that I've seen. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just levels.
Every
time you get to the top, you think there's just one more level. Yeah. That's
and what
great.
you get out of it is what you put into it. It's like more, it's any sales, but I think this especially, you really get to see that what someone's putting into it is almost exactly what they're going to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a great place to end. That's a great place to end. Brock, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today. And if you're looking for a hard money loan, you can contact me at 717-213-8488. Till then, you guys have a great day. Go make some money. See ya.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Take care.